So our system today is filling cross-chain intents in less than 1.5 seconds. And this is like an unoptimized V0. And we do expect there to be more latency gains as we continue to make the system more robust.
None of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Wagner Ventures or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities.
Hey Wagner family, thanks for joining as always. It's your host Benga, here with another Wagner Ventures podcast episode. Today I'm chatting with Kurt Larsen, co-founder and CEO of Rhinestone. Rhinestone is building a platform to enable a secure ecosystem of smart account modules and, with it, permissionless wallet innovation. For anyone who is new, this is the Wagner Ventures podcast, where we do snapshots with interesting builders and founders across crypto and AI. Check out wagnerventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. Wow. Kurt, great to finally have you on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Looking forward to diving in.
Fantastic. Let's start with your crypto journey leading up to Rhinestone. How have your experiences at Deliveroo, Deutsche Bank influenced your decision to jump into crypto and eventually start Rhinestone?
Yeah, so I got into crypto as I was leaving Deutsche Bank, and I guess I got in through retail trading, as a lot of people do. And so that was around 2016, so I was lucky with the timing there, but like everyone else, got wrecked on the way down. But during that time, got really into the tech. And at that time, I was also starting with Deliveroo. And so I was paying a lot more attention to what was going on in terms of where innovation was happening, and just in terms of technology generally. I got into Ethereum, was like the main protocol that I really started to follow, the main asset I was buying. And then it probably wasn't until 2020 when DeFi Summer took off that I really started to pay more attention to the application layer and to think more about how blockchain technology could be used in the types of products that I was building, but also be used across like other fields that weren't just like speculative kind of asset trading. And so what I was doing specifically at Deliveroo, I was focused on building and scaling the marketplace. So originally I was head of operations for Australia, and that was purely around like building out the delivery network within Australia. So it was like a 0 to 1 kind of like scale up within the market, which was a ton of fun. And then I took those learnings and I relocated to London with the company, and I moved into a tech role. So I was a product manager for the marketplace algorithms group, and I was focused on building machine learning algorithms like around pricing, incentives, merchandising, etc., to continue to help scale the marketplace that after we'd moved through that kind of 0 to 1 phase, and we're getting more into the optimization and utilizing tech to take the marketplace to the next level. And it was during that time that I learned a lot about essentially the zero-sum game of Web2 marketplaces, and was getting more into crypto and thinking about how blockchain technology could help push ownership of the network to the edges and allow for very different kind of incentive structures to happen within marketplaces. This is around the same time that you had companies like Brains Trust taking off. And so I ended up leaving Deliveroo to explore ideas around this concept. And that was when I met Conrad. We had some very like early stage ideas around how Web2 companies could adopt blockchain technology to change the incentive structure of their marketplace. And ultimately, we just kept running into the same problem with our customers. And that was that the products were great, but they wanted us to help them onboard users into crypto, like actually like improve the experience of bringing users onto this new platform. And that's when we went deep into account abstraction, and we thought, okay, smart accounts and this new concept account abstraction is how we conquer this problem. And then it was just like a snowball effect as we continued to explore the smart account stack and think about what this unlocked. And we were quite lucky with timing as well. This is around late 2022 that we started to dive into account abstraction. And then obviously in February, we had the C4337 go live, or the first audits complete. And that kind of kickstarted the initial account abstraction community that we were heavily involved in.
Yeah, wow. We certainly have Deutsche Bank in common there, and how you transitioned from financial services to Web 2 and now Web 3. And so account abstraction, Rhinestone, what exactly does Rhinestone do? Like, what problem does it address here?
Yeah, so broadly speaking, we're focused on the UX layer of crypto. And that's really what account abstraction is about, to like take it, like be more specific about what exactly we focus on. So we focus on the smart accounts themselves. So we're not a provider of like bundlers and paymasters and what people typically think of when they think of the ERC 4337 infrastructure. So we focus on the smart accounts, and specifically we focus on modular smart accounts. And so for the technical that are listening, we led and authored ERC 7579, which is a minimal standard for modular accounts. And essentially what this enables is you can have different smart account implementations that follow this spec, and then developers can build modules, which are essentially self-contained smart contracts that extend the feature set of any of these accounts. And so there are a number of benefits to this. The main one that we first realized when we were diving into account abstraction was just the developer experience around trying to iterate over the smart account features when you had a monolithic smart account implementation, as the simple account was when 4337 initially launched. And so from there, we've then moved up the stack and gotten more into the developer tooling and the off-chain services that are required to support the different features that are unlocked through these smart account modules.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, man. And in how you were building and addressing this, like what does the tech stack for Rhinestone look like?
Yeah, so a lot of what we do is on-chain. So obviously Solidity and smart contracts is a huge component of our tech stack. So we don't build and maintain our own account. We wrote the standard so that other vendors such as Safe, Economy, Zero Dev, Third Web, there's a whole list of teams that are building their own account implementation that follow the 7579 spec. But we then build modules and tools, on-chain tools that help other teams also build out their own modules, like custom components for these accounts. And so to be more specific there, we have the core modules, which are things like passkeys and social recovery. We have like scheduled transfer and multi-sig, but all like the common features you would expect that a smart account has to enable like easier key management solutions for the user, to enable like social login or signing with your biometrics, but also things around security, typically kind of building on the ability to have key rotation within smart accounts. So this enables like social recovery, etc. Then you have like more powerful concepts such as session keys, or we call them smart sessions, but this enables a user to essentially delegate a scoped and ephemeral key to a third party. So a lot of the new on-chain agent platforms and teams building DeFi agents or whatever it might be are utilizing smart accounts and session keys, or smart sessions, as we call the framework. And then more recently, we've been very focused on a new concept called resource locking, which ties into chain abstraction and how you can enable instant cross-chain transactions. So a lot of what we do is on-chain, so Solidity, and then all the off-chain tool, like developer tools and like back-end services that support these modules is built in TypeScript, and some of this we're starting to build out in Rust as well.
Are these modules like the product set, or can you walk us through what that looks like?
Yeah, so these modules, I guess they're the base component for a lot of these products. So going back to some of the examples I mentioned earlier, you have really simple modules that, I mean, they're simple, but they are also powerful. So passkeys is a big one that took off in 2023, but essentially that allows the user to store the private key or use the secure enclave of the device as the signing mechanism. So when you're using your mobile and you use your Face ID to authenticate, whether it's entering an app or whatever it might be, that's accessing the key material within a secure enclave. And so with the passkeys module, you can actually allow users to sign transactions with that secure enclave. And so obviously this is a much better form factor for managing key material than, you know, having a seed phrase and all these other kind of traditional methods that are insecure for many reasons. And then going to the session key example, so this is a set of modules that unlock these like scoped and ephemeral keys. We have one module which is the session manager, if you will. So it coordinates the sub modules that then once paired create these sessions that the user is authenticating for a third party. And the sub modules are policies and then signature validators. So a signature validator is So allow this user to approve this session with a passkey or with an EOA, or it's a multi-sig, whatever it might be. And then the policies are things like rate limiting or spend limits, or this third party can only interact with this specific smart contract on the user's behalf, or this smart contract with these functions. It is like limitless in terms of the options, the policies that can be built. And then, the combination of these two things allows for, say, like an AI agent to transact on behalf of a user. So if they have like a spending limit with a specific set of contracts they can interact with under certain conditions, then this would be a way to have these permissions be on-chain and therefore fully self-custodial and trustless as well.
Oh, I didn't realize there was like the potential to use the modules with AI agents. Have you explored any use cases there?
We are working with some teams who are exploring these like DeFi agent use cases. So the user is able to plug in like purpose-built agent for a specific DeFi use case. Maybe you can think of it as like robo-advising or like automated investing, but really simple concepts at the moment. Things like, I want to rebalance between these set of vaults to optimize my yield over a certain time span. But you might want to, link in some data oracles and then have some algorithm by which you trade against some tokens under a certain rule set. And with session keys, you're able to essentially give the agent like co-pilot access on the user's wallet, whilst also scoping or isolating the funds and the things that agent can actually do on the user's behalf.
That's pretty interesting. Hey, everybody. Quick thing here. We're excited to announce WAGMI Advisory, your home for all things fundraising, hiring, and partnerships. This is all about supercharging your project with the WAGMI network, consisting of over 20,000 executives, investors, and builders in crypto, all ready to come alongside your project to help it succeed. Get in touch at team@wagmiventures.io to learn more and figure out if WAGMI Advisory is the right fit for your project. Let's get back to the show.
You talk about enabling developers to tap into a programmable validation and execution logic for smart contracts. Can you help unpack what that means or help us to understand how you enable developers?
Yeah, so with these modular smart accounts, the key thing that it enables developers to do is to like write this custom logic that can add new features to the account. And today there are like 4 different broad functions that developers would want to augment with custom logic. The first is the validation logic on the account. And so this means like, this is like the session key concept in a way, if this is like a type of validator. So it's essentially like how to allows developers to customize the authentication and authorization logic of the account. And so passkeys is also a validator. So you're augmenting how the account can authenticate and authorize transactions to take place against the account. The second type is executors. And you can think of this like an if this then that statement within the account. So you're customizing the execution logic of the account. And this is really powerful when you have like sequential transactions, and some of the transactions depend on the return values of prior transactions. And so this is where executors can be useful. Executors can also be useful if you have third-party services or third-party protocols that need specific access on the account, but you want that access to be scoped in a very specific way. So for example, we use this in our chain abstraction system, which I can talk about in a bit. But essentially, you can think of it like providing like railway tracks for transactions from a specific service that goes through the account. And then the third, and I can talk about the fourth for a little bit, but the third is one of the more interesting ones. The fourth is like a catch-all, but the third are hooks. And essentially, hooks are a type of module that can hook into execution pre and post and then enforce conditions against that execution. So like a very simple one is you could write a hook that says like essentially reject all transactions that are trying to move this NFT. And so this would be a form of a hook. This is just a very simple concept. You could do almost anything, and there are some DeFi protocols that we're working with that are using hooks to create certain automations against certain transactions that are happening on their protocol through the account. And then the final one is, we call them fallbacks, but essentially if a function is called on the account and the account does not recognize the function, then it attempts to run that through the fallback modules as like a fallback mechanism. So this is a way to future-proof the account and ensure that you can add more modules, more features to the account that we haven't thought of today in the future.
Yeah, this is pretty cool stuff. And thanks for explaining that. I think we want to hear some of the more exciting stuff. And maybe you can also share the use case partnering and working with Magic Labs. That would be really cool.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we've been working on a product in the chain abstraction meta or space, but essentially the concept behind chain abstraction is that you want users to be able to instantly transact on any chain with funds from any supported chain. And from a user perspective, it's as if the balance of the user is unified across all those chains, and almost like the network just disappears. And in order for it to feel like the network has disappeared, you do need super low latency. If you have funds on Polygon and you're transacting on Optimism, that it's taking 30 seconds to a minute, or even in the magnitude of like 5 to 10 seconds, it removes that magic of I'm transacting on the same chain and can impede like the user experience. And so one of the things we've been building, we call it Omni Account. It's a framework. It's not a specific account, but it's a system of modules and then off-chain services that can transform an ERC 7579 smart account. So this could be the safe, Economy's Nexus, ZeroDev's kernel, into an Omni account. And essentially what that means is the user's balance is unified and can be spent instantly on any chain. And you can utilize funds from many different chains. So this could be you're drawing on funds from Optimism and Polygon to transact on Arbitrum. You could even be drawing on, say, USDC and ETH to fund a USDC transaction on Arbitrum. And so the real innovation is the way that we perform resource locks within the smart account. And what a resource lock is essentially a user opts into, you could say it's almost like opting into censorship, but I think the better way to describe it is they're opting into this system that allows them to provide guarantees to third parties. And those third parties, in this instance, are solvers. So when the funds are in the account, they are locked. And essentially how that works is there's certain on-chain mechanisms that take place. And then when the user wants to spend those locked funds, this like module calls out to the off-chain system we call the orchestrator. And then the orchestrator does essentially accounting, or you could think of it as intent sequencing against the resource lock balance, propagates the intent to the solver market. And then because the solver is able to trust the resource locking method, they can optimistically fill instantly on the target chain. And this is what enables like hyper low latency. So our system today is filling cross-chain intents in less than 1.5 seconds. And this is like an unoptimized V0. And we do expect there to be more latency gains as we continue to make the system more robust. But yeah, so hyperfast cross-chain transactions that kind of just eliminate this feeling of there being many networks for the user. The other really cool thing about this system, so if anyone has experience building with ERC 4337, then you would be very aware of all the complexity and tooling, and it's a nightmare to interface with this infrastructure, the paymasters, bundlers, user ops, all that kind of stuff. With this API, you essentially get same chain transactions, cross-chain transactions all in one. And the orchestrator is dealing with all the complexity around routing and which chains you should be pulling from. And obviously then the solver is taking on a lot of the complexity as well. So in terms of user experience, it's obviously great, but also the developer experience is a notch above what people tend to expect with account abstraction.
With all the routing across chain, same chain for the user and developer through this journey, I know that you guys have also worked with partners around ensuring the security of your users and their privacy. Can you share a little bit more on the work you've done there?
Yeah, so on the security side, one of the first problems when you think about a modular smart account is the fact that it just has a much larger attack surface for a user than even an EOA, although EOAs have their own security concerns. An EOA being an externally owned account, so something you would traditionally use when you're using MetaMask or some of those more traditional wallets. And essentially why that is because when you install a module on your account, you're introducing new smart contract code, and that smart contract code could be malicious or could even have an unintended bug. And so there needs to be a way to not limit, but curate the modules that are being installed on the account. And the issue with curation is that it often leads to centralization. So, the most kind of blunt version of this would be whitelisting the contracts that a user can interact with, and then who governs the whitelist, etc. So one of the things we worked on in the early stages of building out ERC 7579 was a complementary standard called ERC 7484. I think that's correct. And this is essentially it's a system to solve this security problem, but essentially it defines what we call a module registry. The module registry stores attestations that are made against modules. And then when developers interact with the registry, and you can think of the registry as like a marketplace for modules, they can pick their attesters. They can say, well, I trust this attester. And attesters can be Rhinestone, who's doing security audits and then attesting to those security audits on chain. But essentially it provides a way for like this open curation or like a network of trust for modules. There's a bunch of different teams we're working with, and this is something that I think will become increasingly more important as smart accounts and account abstraction becomes more dominant within the Ethereum ecosystem. And then the second thing around privacy, so Rhinestone, where we're not working on anything specific when it comes to privacy, but we have some partners that are doing some cool stuff. So maybe just to name drop, and if people are interested, they can do some research. Maybe like we've got some articles on our blog that can be good starting places. But ZK Email, who are an open source, like public good team, they're developing a ZK circuit to essentially prove the DKIM signatures of different email providers to essentially allow users to privately transact via their email through a smart account. And this can also be used to recover the account. So essentially having like an email recovery system that doesn't expose the user's email, third-party intermediary providing that service. And obviously, like ZK Email, they have a relayer which does the proving, but it's all open source, so anyone could run this tech. So from like a self-preservation standpoint, it's a very strong proposition when it comes to recovery. And then the second one is Inco. They're an FHE network. They wrote the confidential ERC20 standard, and they've been doing a bit of thinking around what modules can be used to essentially introduce confidential or private transactions through this CERC20 to smart accounts.
Sounds pretty comprehensive and extensive. I think it's always beautiful to see when there is like strong effort in ensuring that folks or users have pretty robust data privacy guardrails. And the use case there certainly demonstrates the amount of work and effort you guys have put into ensuring that's the case, regardless of how transactions go across chain or how they're routed. I'll just ask, what does the rest of the year out look like from a roadmap perspective?
Yeah, so Omni account and our chain abstraction system is definitely going to be a huge component of the roadmap for the rest of the year. This has been something that's been like hotly demanded from customers, and it is solving like a real problem that I think allows smart accounts to offer a 10x experience over EOAs. So, and we have a lot of work to do there. We have a lot of work to do when it comes to the orchestrator, integrating more settlement layers, integrating more solvers, supporting more chains, more tokens, more routes, and whether we want to start to add some exotic stuff, not just like any token in to any token out across chains, but potentially there's other, DeFi APIs that we should be offering inside this routing system to developers as well, that they want on top of their chain abstracted accounts. And then beyond that, I would say the other like key focus areas for us is EIP 7702, which is a standard or an EIP that is going to be merged with the Pectra hard fork coming at the end of April. And this will enable EOAs to upgrade to smart accounts. And so we're ensuring that our SDKs and our developer tools are ready for this transition, and making sure that we can allow our customers out, like the developers, to capitalize on this opportunity.
That's exciting. I'll be looking forward to all those initiatives and products as you guys roll them out. Finally, what else in crypto excites you, man?
Yeah, I'm obviously very focused on the wallet space. So that's definitely where I'm focusing most of my attention and time. So maybe I can just like drop a few things that I think developers and builders should be focused on, when like that's not just shilling Rhinestone, but just in general, like things that the team should be aware of. And I already mentioned EIP 7702, which I think is going to be a huge unlock for developers who have predominantly EOA-based users, and they can now access smart account features like the simple ones like batching and gas abstraction to really start to improve the user experience. And there's another ERC which kind of will start to describe how these developers can interact with these smart account functions. It's called ERC 5792. And then obviously around the chain abstraction movement, one of the standards and some of the innovations we're following is ERC 7683, which is an intent standard that Across and Uniswap are leading. And I think the promise here is that as more protocols, solvers, settlement layers, people who are working on similar stuff to what we're working on start to adopt this standard, then it can allow for greater network effects. And that just in general is good for the ecosystem to scale as a whole, rather than having like smaller pockets that are looking to scale in isolation. One really cool concept that we've been working on with Uniswap is something called the Compact. And it's an escrow-like contract that essentially allows two parties to make a commitment to one another. And so it performs like a resource locking function. And I think this is going to be really interesting when you start to combine something like the Compact with this intent standard being led by Across and Uniswap and a bunch of others, like we're involved in the intent standard as well, with things like Unichain, and starting to think about how you scale and improve the experience around cross-chain liquidity. I think that's really exciting.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your insights there. And more importantly, for your insights on the wallet abstraction space and what you're building in Rhinestone. Really appreciate you coming to the show today. And we look forward to hearing more and more interesting things and initiatives coming out of Rhinestone over the next year.
No, not at all. And I appreciate you giving us the opportunity. It's great to be able to share what we're doing on your platform.
Awesome. Thanks, Kurt.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and give us a good 5-star rating and subscribe wherever you're getting your podcasts so you can get all the latest conversations from the most interesting founders, builders, and investors from across the world. Thanks so much, and have a good one.